Good evening, listeners. You tune into Literary Voices. I have once again with me in the studio after about how many years? A year plus?
Yes, that's right.
Yes, Kingsley Jesuorobo. Kingsley Jesuorobo is not just an author or some. He is a lawyer, a human rights advocate. He's a poetic thinker, Amazon's bestseller author of The Province of Poetry, a collection of poems and philosophical phrases. So number one, we're not only dealing with a lawyer, but a philosopher as well. Welcome to Literary Voices.
Thank you, Nana.
And it's always a pleasure.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back here.
And every time you come onto my program, the depth of knowledge and insight you put out is amazing. It is massive.
I appreciate it.
Thank you for being a son of the soil.
Thank you very much.
Yes, beautiful. So, maybe we'll start with a little bit of something from the province of poetry to start off this interview, because it's a heavy subject we are going to touch on.
Thank you. I guess anytime I'm given that option, I seize it. I don't know what you want me to delve into poetically, but I guess one of the things that I must stress is that poetry is the art and craft of twisting and turning thoughts, then weaving and waxing words until you wind up with wisdom.
Amen.
So it cuts across, every sphere of life.
Yes.
And you can't go wrong. It just gives you an opportunity to go with a great deal of intensity.
Yes.
Into, the life that, we have encountered, both in the past,
yes,
in the present, and I guess futuristically too. What is out there, what people have envisioned, and where we are headed. A lot of people tell you that science imitates
the arts, yes.
And you know how big poetry is,
yes,
when it comes to art. So poetry gives a lot of room, for a lot of gymnastics, mental gymnastics.
As you're speaking, you know who is coming to mind. The Chinu Achibes, the Kwesi Bruce, the men and women of African literature, who English is not your first language, but the way they've captured the language, and as you say, I'm going to borrow that word from you, woven it and delivered it back to us with wisdom.
Yes, thank you. I mean, these are great people, icons,
yes,
individuals.
Wole Soyinka.
Whose shoes I'm not even worthy to untie, or the lace of whose shoes I'm not worthy to untie. So it's a great privilege, and it's very humbling that you, an artist as well, a literary genius, in your own right. A lot of people might not know that, your involvement in this whole literary voices affair is not a fluke. You are deep in your approach to art issues. And frankly, what is it that Africa doesn't have?
Very good question.
We take language that is not our own, and guess what we do with it? We stretch it, we contrast it, we compact it, we do all types. Yes. It's amazing. A lot of people would ask, okay, where do these things come from? And I say, well, it's unfortunate that we are not able to express some of these things in our language, because our language has not been fully fledged, developed in written formats, so that we can study and learn and do all kinds of things with it. However, since what we trade with
yes,
is
the English language,
this English medium and all
yes,
these other imported stuff, we just have to make do with what we have.
that is right. Okay, so let's establish the background. So for new viewers who've never watched Literary Voices or watched me interview you ever before, give us a bit of your background, who you are. I know I've said something, but you are the best judge of who you are to the world.
Thank you. Kingsley Jesuorobo. I have a dual ethnicity.
And for those who don't know, Edo ethnicity, Edo is in Nigeria.
Definitely, I was
Yes.
going to go there.
Oh, my bad.
No problem. I wanted to go back to, my roots.
Yes.
I could even go deeper.
Hey, yes.
I'm from Runigbe, Orion local government of Edo State in Nigeria, West Africa, Africa.
The world.
By birth, and of course,
Yes.
I'm Canadian by adoption.
Adoption, yes.
I'm a lawyer, and as you have also said, I have, an artistic side to me.
Yes.
I'm a published author of a bestseller. My book, titled Province of Poetry, a collection
yes.
of poems and philosophical
Phrases, yes.
has risen to the number one spot, in the category of logic and language on
Yes.
Amazon.ca.
Yes, yes.
I'm a human rights advocate. I have been in the trenches, trying to elevate the discourse, around issues of human rights.
Yes.
From very early on, from way back. And for those who might not know, from very early on in the days of the military, I used to be very active in our pro-democracy struggle.
So, hold on. In the early days of the military, as in Nigeria.
Yes, in Nigeria.
Which,
I didn't mean it if I said early days. I mean in the days of
yeah.
the military, prior to, we say we have a civilian government right now.
Yes. So, which military government was that?
From Babangida to Abacha especially.
Yes.
The regime of Abacha brought Nigeria to an unprecedented, point in terms of notoriety, and the brazen breaches
Yes.
that Nigerians encountered, reached the zenith, if you will, at that point, and it galvanized a lot of people, including myself. I was there as a student of University of Toronto. I participated in a lot of the democratic push or protest to emancipate, my people from, that, from the blight and the plight of military dictatorship, especially under Abacha,
Yes.
the days of Ken Saro-Wiwa, another literary icon who was brutally murdered, judicially, unfortunately, by the Abacha regime. I recall, for example, making press rounds with Saro-Wiwa's son when he came here, while his father was still on trial back in the 90s, 1995 or thereabouts.
Yes.
I recall then telling folks that, the dictators should not be underrated, because one of the, very saddest aspects of, the experience that we go through is the level of impunity, that the rulers, demonstrate it's just mind-boggling. I mean, things that if you read, in a novel, in a fiction work, you would say, oh, that's not possible. These guys do these things so blatantly, so brazenly.
With no regard for humanity.
Yes, that's
and
the
consequences.
Thing. And yes, that's the thing. The impunity, that pervades the system is just, outstandingly shocking. Now, then I recall, as I was saying, telling folks, these guys should not be taken, lightly.
Yes.
We received a lot of support, from the international community.
Yes.
Canada was big. We protested. I recall myself and my colleagues then would make sure that wherever High Commissioner visited in Toronto, in Ottawa, anywhere in Canada, we were there, to protest and disrupt, if you will, the events. To the point where they became so embarrassed that they had to shut down the Nigerian, High Commission in Ottawa.
Okay.
And as you know, not too long after that, there was the crackdown still continued. Canada opened its doors. Chief Anthony Nahoro of blessed memory. He was, by the way, a constitutional icon. He moved the motion for Nigeria's independence.
Yes.
I'm talking about the caliber of individuals that had to run, from these military abuses that people were going through. So he came here. I hosted, this Nigerian icon here in Canada. We had Sarowiwa's younger brother, Dr. Owens Wiwa, also come here, and we hosted him. We played a great deal of
role.
a great deal of role. I used to write newsletters, educating Canadians about the goings on in Nigeria, and a whole host of my friends. We gathered together. We operated under the banner of a democratic group called Democratic Alliance for Nigerians in Canada. I was the chairman of the board of directors at that time.
Is it still in?
No,
it's no longer.
It's not. I mean, we basically wound that down. The reason being that we didn't know that there was need to continue the clamor, for enthronement of democracy after we thought we had realized our objectives. But what's playing out now is making things look more like, a militocracy, a dictatorship, and that brings in the question of Shawore. Why is it that, at this day and age, after so much has been done or has seemingly been done, we are almost back to square one. Why are the rights of people being blatantly violated? Why are court orders not being respected? These are things that are, creating a great deal of shock and outrage.
So, before we get in depth into Shawore issue, if you could give us a little bit about who Shawore is.
Well,
for those who don't know.
Well, frankly, Omo Yele Shawore is a Nigerian. He's a prominent blogger.
Sahara reporter.
Journalist. I don't know the difference. I hear people say, okay, anyone who is out there, writing news or opinions, who is not a journalist. I don't know what that term means, other than if you use it technically, we're probably talking about people who went to school
for journalism.
But basically anyone who writes in my expanded definition and spreads news or even analyzes news is a journalist in terms of the current balance, of that word. Now, he is mainly based in the U.S., or his outfit, Sahara Reporters, operates out of the United States.
Okay, that's why it's not stopped. It's
perhaps, but you know, Nigerian press has really gone far in terms of their resiliency.
Yes.
You know, they've undergone a lot of stress, and they've passed this stress, and they've been daring. Just the other day, one of Nigeria's prominent newspapers called The Punch said they were going to stop labeling or start labeling the current administration a regime as opposed to a government.
a democratic government.
Yes,
Okay.
a civilian government. And they were going to start addressing the president as a major general, which was the rank that he retired as. So
Yes.
that's to tell you the level of courage, you know, Nigerian journalists have demonstrated over the years. But back to Showore,
Yes.
he contested for presidency in the last presidential election, which occurred in February
Yes.
of 2019.
Okay.
And at some point, you know, the controversy surrounding him now arose later on in the year when he called for revolution, and
Yes.
there's been a lot of debate as to what he meant by that, whether he meant, you know, violent, you know, takeover of government,
Yes.
and that culminated in him being arrested and then charged to court. The problem for me personally is not really about arresting anybody or charging people. It's about allowing decorum to reign, or allowing the rule of law to prevail.
Yes.
When you arrest, you exercise your power to prosecute, and that's something that you do within your discretion.
Yes. So, just a quick interjection. When we're talking about Showore, what does he represent to the Nigerian youth?
Actually,
And why the word revolution caused so much issues, so to speak, for the government?
It shouldn't. For me,
it shouldn't. Yes.
I don't think the use of the word revolution, you know, should agitate anyone.
Unless they themselves
Yes, have
take it differently.
Skeletons
Exactly.
or reason to fear. There shouldn't be, because you see, at the end of the day, this is my point. This is my personal view as far as this whole issue is concerned. Yes, you can draw whatever interpretation you like
Yes.
from someone's use of any word. You may say, okay, it was intended to overrun the government or overall the state, or you know, cause havoc, commotion, breakdown of law and order, and whatever you like. Attribute whatever you want to it. But you see, you cannot be an accuser and then a judge in a democratic setting. That is where I draw the line. The behavior of the members of the executive, you know, for example, in flouting the court order for Showore's release, essentially, is what aggravates me.
Yes.
What I see as an outrage.
So that represents to the world that Nigeria has no respect.
Thank you. That is the problem. That is the problem. It is the infamy, is the agony, you know, of being a Nigerian. You are out here, you know, people are wondering what's going on in your country.
Yes.
You know, the court, you know, are saying one thing, you know, the government is saying another, or doing another. You know, that is the problem. It is shameful. It's scandalous.
Because I do believe the most that we saw all over the media, both in on the continent and out in the world, is chaos in a courtroom.
Oh, goodness me. Well, that is what we are talking about. You see, a lot of times, Nigerians are told, you don't give a bad name to the country, try and maintain, good image. When you go there, be good ambassadors, and what have you. And
Yes.
in one fell swoop, this whole idea
Yes.
of projecting a beautiful image, an attractive image, is desecrated by the deviant disposition of those who ought to know better. At some point, talking about, some of the very strange occurrences surrounding Showore's trial.
Yes.
Okay, he was charged, in different fora. I would argue, okay, you know what, I don't think it is something that anyone needs to be worked up over. After all, we have a judiciary that is supposed to dispense justice.
Yes.
If you are arrested and charged, you're supposed to have your day in court. That is what democracy is all about. That is what rule of law is all about. When, for whatever reason, under any guise, that your day in court concept is confined to the dustbin or put in the coffin, then just you cannot honestly continue to assert that what you are practicing is something that adheres to the tenets of the rule of law.
Yes.
They are just incompatible.
And, with me being an outsider looking in and looking at a few, I wouldn't say I am very knowledgeable. No, that is why you're here. It has a sense of deja vu feeling from historical, how everything is going. The courts that are really sort of jokes. It's like the court system is a joke that is just people going through. And then there's this theme that I find, either people being killed, just like the first case we mentioned, Soriwiwa,
Right.
being a voice for the people, Fela Kuti also being a voice for the people. And I do remember listening to one gentleman in an interview saying Fela said they gave him an injection. It's a similar also story that I heard in an interview with one gentleman, that this gentleman Showore is also saying he was injected with something.
I can't validate that. I've not read anything about Showore and anything that has to do with injection. Of course, many people are fearful that anything could happen.
Yes.
And I'm not going to delve into the realm of speculation or get to the point of trying to rely on rumors, unfounded as they were or as they are, about what tomorrow holds. What I have currently is sufficient for me, and which is sadly disconcertingly worrisome.
Yes.
You have a situation where this gentleman was granted bail.
Yes.
Okay. Very stringent conditions were imposed by the court. The court, in his wisdom, decided, okay, you've charged him with the worst possible offense you can charge anyone with, treason.
Yes.
Or treasonable felony. And at the end of the day, the court says, okay, I would give you limited freedom if you comply with ABCD, you meet these conditions. And then the accusers now come up with their own version of judging the judge, if you may call it that, as in, okay, where we have to vet the shorties. You know, these are strange things. In one of the interventions that I put out there, I said I had never heard of any such thing.
Yes.
You know, as a legal practitioner, and I've been in the field for a while. It was just 29 years the other day since I was called to bar in Nigeria.
Yes.
So I've been there, and I do understand. I've represented people, although my main area is immigration and refugee law. I've had appearances in criminal courts. I've had people present cases in the context of bail hearings and what have you. I've helped. I've been a criminal litigator, so I do know. And my clients have been granted bail. You know, these other folks they have nothing to do with it. The prosecutor has nothing and should have nothing to do with the bail, situation, bail process. Because if it were up to them, probably this individual would never see the light of day, would never come out until the trial is completed. And that is why that power, statutorily and even constitutionally, as per the whole concept of separation of powers, is vested in the court. The court that will determine. They are the ones that will pronounce judgment at the end of the day. You are even presumed innocent, no matter how huge, a burden you bear. You are still presumed innocent. And in fact, the burden is on the state to establish that you are guilty. So none of these things has occurred. We are in a situation where the court says, okay, you go. At some point, they were fined. The court, of course, not satisfied. In fact, I wouldn't use the word not satisfied. The court, being disturbed by their behavior, fined them for non-compliance. They purportedly complied, paid the fine.
So fined who for non-compliance? The
DSS.
The DSS.
Yes, the prosecutors, the security agency that is in charge. That were the folks that were prosecuting this case. I understand the matter has been taken over by the Attorney General of the Federation now, and it is still an issue that is pending. It's been taken over. We have not seen anything occur in the context of, compliance with the court, valid court order. The fact that, as we speak, he has made bail conditions. I've not read or heard anything with respect to new charges or anything like that. So, as far as I'm concerned, technically, these people are still in violation of the order of the court, which was basically free this individual for now. Let this matter be adjudicated in court. And if at the end of the day the court agrees with their own version of their interpretation, of what he did, then so be it. But let this individual, let this gentleman have his day in court. That is not too much to ask, Nana, is it?
It is not. So basically, the whole idea is to try and shut him down.
Apparently, you see, that is the problem. They are giving the impression. I mean, what else is someone to deduce from this? Someone, right, has been charged. Don't be overzealous. Let these
him
issues,
have his day.
Yes, let these issues play out. It's not too much.
My thing right now is, why do they want him to shut his why do they want to shut his voice so much?
Good question. I wish you could have them on this seat.
And yes,
reasonable people would infer that what is happening is I don't know. It's a combination of things. If we have to delve into that, I don't see why anyone should fear. Our president just won a re-election. He's got, I guess, 3.5 years more now, because he was sworn in May of this year for a second term. Constitutionally, he can't
go beyond
he's
that.
not expected to
Yes.
contest again. So there's nothing to fear. Yeah, I think for me, it all boils down to one fearing nothing. Even if Nigerians are not that pliable. They are not. We are not a group of people that someone could just call. Oh, you know what? Let's go and overthrow this government. This guy doesn't even have the capacity. But I know that is for the court to determine. But
that,
there's nothing for this regime, this government, these folks who are pressing this charge. There's nothing for them to fear. I can't see how someone expressing himself, we have bigger issues to deal with. We have bigger problems to confront. This is just, we are selling ourselves short. I'm sorry.
Exactly the point. I just see that people who stand for the majority of the people who become a voice for doing the right thing, unfortunately get targeted. As you were speaking and you were giving me your background history and everything, I said, oh my goodness, if you were there, you probably be beside.
Well, thank you. You see, we at some
because
point,
you are advocate for the truth.
Thank you. You see, at the end of the day, we have to appreciate that we are gifted to have life. At the end of the day, we also have to appreciate that nothing lasts forever.
That's right.
Those of us who have chosen this path, I recall during those heydays of our anti-Abacha activities, a lot of people used to tell me on the side, this is risky, why do this, and so on and so forth. We still went out there, we did what we had to do.
Yes.
I remember returning to Nigeria at some point. While returning, a lot of my friends who knew said, you know what, you could be, jailed, you could have all kinds of problems, for speaking out, for doing what you had to do. I looked at, the whole scenario and I said, okay, if someone, of such a high repute as Chief Anthony Enahoro, he was already a minister before I was even born.
Yes. And
if he could, then he was an octogenarian, and he's gone to the great beyond. May God bless his soul.
Yes.
If he could, despite all his accomplishments, all he had, still go out there. And when he told the tale of how Abacha would call him and try to talk him out of his opposition to his very mischievous and corrupt and the adjectives are not coming, but it was the dark days, darkest days that we ever experienced was under Abacha. So he's still dead, the devil as it were, and he spoke up, spoke out. And there are people that give you, the kind of impetus. Look at Nelson Mandela.
Yes.
He had a choice, to be out there. He went back home. And what legacy has he left? So if you want to keep quiet, shut your mouth and try to blend, it's up to us. We are where we are because a lot of people, would rather just shut their mouth, or if they open it, it's about singing praises because they think, there is an option, for them to get to have a benefit.
Yes.
At this point, one has been blessed, tremendously. So there is no point not speaking up. If I could, when I was much younger.
Not now that.
What is it? What is it?
Yes.
That I'm sticking.
So this leads me into perhaps one of the biggest questions that, which is democracy in Africa, democracy in Nigeria. What democracy should be, what democracy unquote, is now and is democracy or was democracy ever for Africans?
Thank you. I mean,
I know it's a wide breadth of questions, but you take it anywhere, anyhow.
it's a very contextual thing.
Yes.
Democracy is, I mean, it has to be contextualized. You know, wherever you are, you have to look at the content. You know,
Yes.
to what degree have people evolved? Even in America, you know, the bastion of democratic governance.
Yes.
You hear they are immersed in, you know, impeachment, you know, issues.
Yes.
You know, around rigged 2016 election, around
2020
purported plan for rigging of the, because that's what it is ultimately. If someone
Yes.
is cheating, someone is, you know, they say foreign interference.
Yes.
What does it mean at the end of the day when you dissect and distill all of this? You get to the point where what they are telling you in all these fancy languages, someone is trying to cheat. You know, so everywhere
Yes.
to a degree, yes, you could say, you know, nothing is perfect. But Nigeria has been, you know, shockingly, you know, at the same state. Not much has happened. I mean, to be candid, a lot of people hearing me, I mean, especially if I write anything that is critical of the government, they will say, "Oh, you people, I can't even believe you are one of those who got this man to where he is." You know, because I always wanted change. I always wanted a situation where, you know, we'll continue to continue to do as much as we can to change the status quo until we get there.
Well, that's the platform he came on with.
Okay. Of course, that is one of the
However,
most disappointing, you know, outcomes, I would say, of one's endeavor. You try. You say, okay, a lot of things are going to change. Promises are made at the end of the day. From okay, when we get there, we're going to have state police. We're going to fix the issue of electricity system. We are going to, you know, do ABCD. And at the end of the day, everything just seems static. No movement other than, I guess, perhaps backwards. So,
yes.
And now we thought we had reached a point where the issues of rule of law should no longer or will no longer be, you know, topical. Where we are not now at the point of, okay, oh, the court said this, how come it's not being obeyed? We shouldn't be there. That is retrogressive, sadly. So we have to try as much as we can to increase the content, you know, of our democratic experiment.
Yes.
So far, it's still too low. You know, we are not talking here about, you know, issues of, you know, people snatching ballot boxes and all that, which, you know,
the idea of democracy itself.
The whole idea,
Yes.
the things that you don't really need to drag yourself into, other than, unless you want to give the impression that you are just out to ruin the future of over 200 million people, because ultimately we are judged. We are judged. Imagine if you were in a household and your parents, you know, guardians, you know, are out there misbehaving. It's going to reflect on you.
That's right.
That's what it is. I mean, this whole thing is scandalous.
Yes.
Everywhere you go, people look at you. Judges would on the side while, you know, you're on break. You know, so I was reading this thing the other day.
Yes.
I was watching this clip the other day. I mean, what do you say? These things haunt you.
So as at the moment, the whole world is looking at, is focused on Showere's case in Nigeria, how it's going to play out.
Rightly so. Rightly so. It shouldn't be a matter. It can't be. It can't be brushed aside. It can't be put, you know, under a bushel. You're not going to hide it. It stinks so badly that, you know, is something that I would rather, if I were to speak directly to those at the helm, I would say this is needless, you know, scandal.
Yes.
Avoid it. Because ultimately, we are setting bad precedents.
Yes.
It is something that logic can. There's not logic will always condemn it.
Yes.
Unless you don't want to be realistic. We understand this whole concept of, okay, well, I have the power. That's what people say. Oh, you can be detained. Oh, you don't know what they know. There's no such thing, and that is why the rule of law, is there.
Yes.
You are not, regardless of what you know, there is nothing that authorizes or validates a situation where, after you've used what you know to apprehend a suspect,
Yes.
ultimately the person or the institution that ought to determine the arbiter, final arbiter, is the court.
Is the court.
That is the law. That is what ought to be in a society ruled by law, not by man.
Yes. When I, and correct me if I'm wrong, when I look at the case and when I listen to everything we've had, all the conversation we've had about this, albeit that it was sort of an attempt to shut down a voice, a valuable voice, it looks like right now it has actually amplified the voice that needs to be heard.
Obviously, that is the whole thing. Even if you look at it from a philosophical perspective, I mean, those who are pushing this, they are not doing themselves any positive thing, because if you look at the reverberations from this, if you look at the reverberations from these issues, you see that they are giving voice, making the voice of Jesuorobo much louder.
Exactly.
They are giving themselves bad publicity. At the end of the day, our country is worse off for it. I don't think any argument can be advanced to make people to understand or see where they are coming from. I mean, funny enough, Jesuorobo, because I interact a lot with my people,
Yes.
Jesuorobo is not one of the most liked people in Nigeria. Why is that? Because he was seen as one of the major promoters of the Buhari second coming.
Oh.
Yes, Sahara Reporters, his outfit, essentially was so pro-Buhari campaign that at the end of the day, a lot of people say, okay, well, it's good for him. It's a case of you sow the wind, you reap the wild wind.
Yes.
You get it. So, and that is another thing that I must touch upon. You see, folks are unfortunately quite, they don't forget easily.
Or judgmental.
We are judgmental, no doubt, but we have to try to distill these things. We ought to, be more critical, in our evaluation of these developments.
But as you said, if he was instrumental in Buhari coming in, he is the same person that has to call him to order.
I wish people thought that way. I wish people.
If I made sure you came in based on the reflection that you are going to do better than those people who came before you, and Buhari has been on there. This is the second as a military.
He was a military head of state back in
coup d'état.
Through a coup.
Yes.
D'état. He was there for about a year or so, and then he was overthrown by another dictator. And so this was, since the return or Nigeria's return to democratic governance, he tried very unsuccessfully a few times. I don't know, 4 or thereabouts time before he finally won the presidency. And I was one of those personally who didn't like what was going on because I thought, we could do better. So I was very outspoken in terms of my condemnation of what was going on in the regime that he succeeded. And during this past presidential election, I was not too active because I just, it wasn't lethargy or anything like that. It wasn't that I wasn't interested in what was going on. It was just that, you know what, I felt, okay, maybe he needed a little more time and maybe he could, and the options, I mean, for me, were not that great. So Jesuorobo was there. He was one of the people that vied, as I pointed out before. But then, ironically, people use it against him, say, oh, well, you wanted to become president because you didn't succeed. Now you want to spoil, the show and all kinds of things. I don't think, with all due respect to people who push that line of argument, I don't think that ought to be it. We have to keep our eyes on the ball. People have right to express criticisms against the government, and the government should develop thick skin. And if they believe someone has said something bad, the courts are there. Ironically, even Buhari himself has been a victim, of what I would call excessive use of the law. He was in, whether it was house arrest or I don't know the circumstances of his detention after he was on patrol for several years. Yeah, he was. So you would expect that
him to understand.
People who have been subject to, all these no court review kind of detention, would say, okay, you know what, this shouldn't be happening. The court should always be given, its rightful place in any society that wants, better tomorrow.
We coming to the end of this interview, but at a certain point in the future, I would like us to talk about the African psychology and the philosophies that we hold. You've kind of touched a little bit on it, but we will not go in depth because we pressed for time, and this is keenly on Jesuorobo's case. So if you have any last, thoughts and views and whatnots before we sign off.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Every time I come, you engage me quite deeply. I welcome that opportunity to delve into the psychological and philosophical disposition, of many of us who happen to have that African heritage. I think we need, personally, just on the surface, I've been canvassing this notion that we need to be more critical in our thinking. Nobody knows everything, but we shouldn't be too rushy. We should be a little more painstaking, in dissecting things, and we shouldn't, condemn people who are out there in the trenches, trying to advance our interest.
Our common interest.
Yes, our common interest. You see, I mean, for all I care, Jesuorobo could have remained in the United States.
That's
where his family is, and you hear people say, "Oh, well, his family are in, the family members are in the U.S. He's calling other people's children to come." There will always be, a reason. And guess what? Those are excuses that are completely self-destructive. They won't help us. One of my philosophical phrases is that failure is the bride price for marriages. So, excuses. When you continue, when you have this fixation and almost incurable addiction to excuses, failure is certainly your destination. And I repeat it, failure is the bride price for marriages to excuses. Thank you very much.
Wow. On this note, you've been tuned into Literary Voices with myself, NANA YAA YEBOAA, as your host, and Kingsley Jesuorobo as my guest. Thank you, and tune in next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.